We have many different aspects of this issue being presented this morning, and so we want to start. Our first speaker, of course, is from the school system, the superintendent of schools, and has to get back. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Lee.
All right, just the quick business of the meeting. The money envelopes going around. Your $7 will be greatly appreciated. The signature sheet is going around as well. Good morning, John. Good. Another speaker. Better apologize.
Just had to sneak across the border to get here.
That's right. And then the announcements of where you are from, keep it very brief. What you represent, if you're an individual citizen, wonderful. If you are here representing a group, wonderful. We want to hear from you. My first comment about that is that I work both with a few different groups, and the superintendent of schools has to sort of hurry today because he has another meeting at 8:30. So I want everyone to know he will be has good 45 minutes by the Women's Club can give him on the 4th of March in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. So I want everybody to know that he is able to be with us on that day, and you can hear more because he's rushed today, but of course he's specific to our subject. And our one other announcement, on the 10th of March, there will be a meeting about affordable housing, and that's at the library in Larchmont, and it's a very important meeting, and to explain the new affordable housing project going up in Larchmont. So with that, my name is Mary Lee Berridge, sorry, co-president of the summit. All right, we'll go down this way.
I'm Richard Allen, pastor at Mamaroneck United Methodist Church and with the summit.
Nice and loud.
Janet Siegel, Four Winds Hospital. Judy Dabroff, Campus Support Team. Amy Sleeper, the Summit, and Amy Ross, Westchester Jewish Community Services, Parent-Child Home Program.
Jeremy Yankpen, Washingtonville Housing Alliance, and Summit.
Ernie Ricketts, right next to us.
Kay Francis Richards from Meredith, Larchmont Human Rights Committee, and Summit.
God bless you.
Shoya Abrams, Schneider, Wayne, Soundshore area.
Mine's about 4 or 5 minutes. If that.
Bob Hyde from Summit.
Lane Schaffner, co-president of Summit.
Tom Bradley, Larchmont.
New first-time visitor. We're delighted to have you, John. We get the catch up to these two.
Selwyn Freed, Physicians for National Health Program and Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Iris Freed, Hope Community Services.
I'm Paige. I'm with the Sound and Town Report.
Lisa Center with the Summit.
Ernie Odierna, Councilman, Town of Meredith.
Lynette C., Mamaroneck School Board. Janet Buckbinder, the Summit, and Larchmont Mamaroneck Radar.
Jeff Megan, President of Mamaroneck Library and Washingtonville.
Scott Gassman, America Speaks.
Bruce Shearer, the Summit.
Teddy Becker, the Summit, and at Home on the Sound, and Westchester Jewish Community Services.
Mariana Boneo, Summit, and Eminent Theater. By the way, there's an international film series. The first film is going to be on immigration in Belgium. Happens everywhere. Okay.
Karen Parisi, Rhinebeck High School.
Heidi Sickles, the Summit, and the Rhinebeck Board of Education. And I'm taking notes. I'm going to be doing a press release, so I may be reaching out to you after the meeting.
Bring my camera.
I brought my camera. All right. Take a picture of yourself. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. And here comes Carolyn Pomerantz. Very good. Welcome, Carolyn. All right. I'll turn it over now to our very special moderator.
And again, I'm Richard Allen. I'm moderating this, and really that's timekeeper. We've already heard the introduction of the topic. It's about immigration, the opportunities and challenges that are facing us, and we're all immigrants in a way. I would say that from a pastoral perspective, the perspective that we share with our Jewish brothers and sisters reminds us that we're all sojourners, and have been, and continue to be in this world. So with that in mind, I turn it over to Dr. Robert Shafts. He's the superintendent of schools, who's going to talk about, and he's been here a long time, 7 months now. We want to welcome him. And And I'll say what I say to folks at church when we're introduced or when we're greeting new people, y'all be nice now. Dr. Schatz, thank you for talking about the opportunities, the challenges of diversity in the school system. I'll let you use the microphone.
Thank you. I don't know if it's better to stand or sit.
Yes.
Stand, please. So thank you for inviting me here this morning. It is true, I am new, and I'm wondering after 7 months at what point they take the new tag off. But it's been a wonderful start, a wonderful transition. I also have to say that given the topic, I am a third-generation immigrant. So I think, as you alluded to, we are all immigrants, and this notion of diversity and what makes our country, what I think, great and exciting, how it pertains to school is critically important. All of you know, because we all attended schools, that for a long period of time the schoolhouse was seen, what I would say is, as the great equalizer in some ways, a place for immigrants, for all of our students to come into one central place and learn about our country, but learn to be a citizen as well. And so this issue of immigration is not new to schools, but the challenges and opportunities, I think, continue to change. And so I would like to at least touch on and speak to some of the challenges and opportunities that we face or that we encounter each day in our school district. So to get a sense at least of our schools, and I think in many ways it mirrors our community, I would just want to give you a statistics from our recent state report card. When you think about our schools, we're thinking about a population that has 3% African American, 16% Hispanic, 4% Asian, and 76% white. And though I would say that we have predominantly a white population, I think this community and our schools prides ourselves on this notion of diversity. And so for a new superintendent to come to the school district, one of the things that I look to from my own experience was to say, how do I take my professional lens and understanding about education and apply it to a diverse school population and a place that really celebrates diversity and is a welcoming community. When I think about the challenges that we face, I would say that as we look at immigration and look at what I would say is a changing population of students, we have to first understand their perspective. And I think it's really important as a superintendent, as an administrator, as a teacher, and we were talking about this at the table, that we all bring to our roles and our view of education a certain lens. And I think when we think about immigration, in so many ways the challenge for all of us is to appreciate that other perspective. How do we understand the lives of immigrant population? How do we understand the cultural norms that they bring to their lives, to their home, to the schools, and we build that sense of trust. At the same time, I think the challenges we face is that we are about learning. And how do we really understand the programs, the academic programs, the social programs that will support the success of all of our students, but certainly of our immigrants, our newly arrived students or immigrants to our community. And so that challenge, in many ways, it goes in different directions. One, we want to create programs that can really target the needs of students and provide the resources and to understand what will work to have each student meet with success. But at the same time, when we talk about resources, when you start to, in some ways, isolate students, create programs that are separate from what I would say mainstream, in some ways, are you really doing a disservice to what students need as far as this notion of assimilation, being part of a community, and so forth. So I do think the greatest challenge is to be able to really make visible and be honest about the academic support needs that students really require. At the same time, how do we build the sense of community, the sense of inclusion, and so forth? And I think that has been a struggle of schools for a very long time, and I don't think that's going to change. And I think in a period of heightened, this heightened look and examination of resources coming from the federal government, from the state, and locally, that to stay true to the mission of, and to understand the needs of all students, and to be able to appropriate certain resources and attention is further challenged, and that's all. So that's what I would say is the hallmark of the challenge side. I think when you talk about opportunities, and I said to our faculty the first day we were together, in September, that at a time of great challenge, we need to look for the opportunities that exist along the way, and I really believe that. But when I think about opportunities, it's very clear that if you look at the research about immigrant population and how, from the school's perspective, we support students' opportunity for success and just equity and opportunity, it goes beyond just looking at the student. And so what I think I would like to share today and say about the Mamaroneck School District, public schools, is we've done a terrific job in the last several years to create those opportunities for parents to join in and be a part of our school system. So we feel in many ways that the ingredients for success is just not in the classroom, but it's in the areas of how do we expand and provide consistent communication. So we've created a parent and community organization like PATHS, where we invite in what I would say members of a Latino population, what I would say is, and affiliated resources to talk about what I would say is opportunities to bridge the school and home. And I think that's a key piece about opportunities. Just having the opportunity to send out on a daily basis or when we need a message to the home in home language is an incredible advantage for the school system because, again, the idea is to bring the school and the home together. When you go back to the research, and there's been a tremendous amount of research on immigration and immigration in terms of how it plays out in the school system, it's important to note that you need, in many respects, to create those opportunities for students to see beyond what I would say is their local area and their environment. So one of the things I'm very proud of is that our guidance department has established programs to really educate students and open up opportunities for students to understand the college process by visiting colleges, to understand the type of commitment, the academic commitment that's required, but to start to introduce that type of program early on and to bring parents and family members in, because access to college or continuing academic programs is a key fundamental ingredient for future success for immigrant population. At the same time, we know that just looking at our students and understanding by attending classes and participating in a normal academic program, that it gets back to that original view of challenge that we need to do more. So how do we create early intervention programs or programs like Small Treasures? How do we create after-school opportunities for academic support to really bring forth what I would say is an expanded effort for our students, because they need that extra help and extra push. And it reinforces, and I'll close by saying, it provides what I'd say a strong signal to the home that the school is a place of support, of opportunity, and engagement, and it's how do we bring you in. So I think, to summarize, we know that immigration and this idea of what I would say is the changing population is here to stay, and we support that, and it brings and it captures an important ingredient of what represents our school and our world. Is how do we face those challenges together and move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schatz. As we said, he has to be at another meeting at 7:30, so he won't. I'm sorry, 8:30. I'm still on Nicaragua time, I guess. He has to be in another meeting in a little while, and so he's going to leave us. And thank you, Dr. Schatz, for being with us. Our other panelists are, why don't I introduce them now and let them know how we're going to head forward. First is Dr. John Gitlitz. He's going to speak to us next for about 10 minutes. Is that okay?
I'll try.
Okay. He's the Associate Professor of Political Science at Purchase College. He's taught courses on immigration for 6 years, and he's going to talk to us, I think, about the immigration system we have and how that impacts our community and what that means for us. John, you're going to have about 10 minutes, and after him, Mayor Rosenblum is going to talk to us about. We'll give you a degree about it.
The third degree.
I've been given a doctorate sometimes when I don't have one, and that's okay. But going to talk to us about. He's the mayor of the village of Mamaroneck, and we're talking about the changes in the village, in immigration issues over the last while, and how he sees things from his perspective. And then Martha Lopez is with us also. She is the former head of the Hispanic Affairs Office of the county, and she's a person intimately involved with this and personally aware from her own experience. And so we're asking her to bring her experience as well. I'll give you the microphone. The battery's low. If it dies, we'll just put it down. And I'll give you a high sign when you've had about 10 minutes. What I'd like you to do is take about 10 minutes each, and we'll save some time at the end for questions. And I'd like you to save your questions for them till the end. And I'll promise to try to give us all some time for that. So John, we'll let you start.
Thanks everybody for being here. I feel a little uncomfortable because you all know me as chair of the Hispanic Resource Center, and this is probably the first time I've come here with my other cap, and I had to put on a special uniform so I could do it. I'll also warn you that as professor, I have been for 32 years trained to think in an hour and 15 minutes. But I'll do my best.
My congregation leaves at a certain time.
When I think about immigration in America, I have three images that always come to my mind. One of them is, of course, the day laborers gathering in Columbus Park, which has been so dear to my life for the last 7 or 8 years. One of them is just Mamaroneck Avenue, and the vitality of Mamaroneck Avenue over the last 2 or 3 years, and the delight that I don't have to go to Portchester to eat dinner anymore. But one of them is also in the school systems. In my daughter's senior year in school, and her friends who were beginning to realize that they weren't going to have the same opportunities as others after graduation because they were going to face legal hurdles that others didn't face. When I first came to Mamaroneck 25 years ago, Mamaroneck was not an immigrant town. It's changed, and it's changed dramatically. It's been spectacular what has happened in the county over the last 20 years. In 1990, the Hispanic population in Westchester County was a little bit under 10% of the population of the county as a whole. In 2000, in the 2000 census, it was about a little over 15%. I haven't seen the 2010 census. I've been searching for it. The 2009 estimates put the Hispanic population of the county at just under 20%. That's huge, and it's a huge increase. Most of that population is here legally. A significant part is here without documents. We don't know how many. Nationally, it's about 1/3. The Fiscal Policy Institute estimates that in the lower Hudson Valley, it's lower than that, it's about 1/5. One of the questions I posed for myself, traditionally immigrants have come to the center cities. They've come to New York, they've come to Los Angeles, they've come to Houston, they've come to Miami. Why the suburbs? How do we account for this huge increase, and how do we account for it beginning in the 1990s? Why is it happening here now? Answer, I don't know. However, I have a hunch. There isn't good research on it, but there's some suggestive things. And we've been talking about purchase, trying to figure out how to look into it and bring it together. There are 2 reasons that we've come up with. One of them, the classic suburban immigrant niche, where immigrants first came and worked, the unskilled trades, gardening, landscaping, secondary construction. For most of the 20th century, those were Italian niches. The Italian immigrants formed the companies, hired the laborers. But over the last 30 years, as the 3rd and 4th generation of Italians have gotten an education, have moved up into the professions, they've been abandoning that niche and creating an open space, and the word has got out, and the new immigrants are moving into it. However, there's a second reason that I think we don't think of quite as often. And that is the changing structure of the American family, and particularly the changing economic structure of the American family. What do I mean by that? My mom stayed at home and took care of me. Today, most families, many families, both adults are in the workforce and out of the home during the day. That means they need a lot more help at home. It also means that when they get home at 5:30 in the afternoon, they don't feel like cooking. I went out to eat when I was a kid maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. People are going out, bringing in take-home far more often, and there has been a boom in the restaurant business. Those have opened up new kinds of jobs for unskilled labor that have probably been the driving force that have brought immigrants into the area. I have a point in this. Immigration is market-driven. And by that I mean, we all know people come here because they want opportunities. But they come here because there is a labor market where they think there are jobs and there are employers who want to hire them. Without the labor market, they wouldn't be coming. Okay. Now I want to move on quickly, if I can, to 2 other good points. Why is this a problem? It's a commonplace in this country today to talk about our broken immigration system. And most often that is referred to, the Lou Dobbs thing, broken borders. We do have broken borders, but that's not the core of the problem. The core of our broken immigration system is that our immigration law is out of sync with our labor market. It cannot meet what are currently the desires of employers and workers. One of the things people always say to me is, I have nothing against immigration, but why are people coming here illegally? Why don't they wait in line? There's an easy answer to that. For most immigrants, there ain't no line. Why? Or at least there's no realistic line. Why? I'll try to do this very quickly. It's a little bit more complex. We admit to the United States as legal immigrants a little bit under 1 million people a year. It varies a little bit. They come in through 3 main avenues as refugees. Not relevant, I'm not going to talk about it right now. As employment, under visas, employment-sponsored visas. That's when my wife's law firm needs an expert in Belgian law. They find a Belgian lawyer and they request a visa for them. Very few unskilled laborers come through employment-sponsored. It's only about 5,000 people per year for the whole country. The biggest category is what we call family reunification. About 2/3 of all visas given for legal entry in the United States go for family reunification. Within that, because we believe we should support the family, the value of not having mom at home and dad here in the U.S. Within that category, we set up priorities, preferences. The first preference is for citizens who are sponsoring their husbands, wives, or young children. The second preference is for legal residents who are sponsoring their wives, husbands, young children. The third preference is for a little bit more distant relatives. The fourth preference is for a little bit farther away relatives. And you get to the bottom of it's for people who aren't related to anybody here. And each year, we fill up the slots available under the system by going down through those preferences. But there's another clincher to it. We also have a cap on the number of people who can come in from any country. I'm all done?
Very close.
Okay. 1 more minute?
1 minute.
Okay. We put cap. And the cap is the same for every country in the world. It's about 50,000 people. What does that mean? It means if you come from a country, let's say Rwanda, which doesn't send many people to the United States as immigrants, it's not important. You don't know anybody, you're not related to anybody, you can still probably get a visa. If you come from Mexico, if you aren't the son, the daughter, the brother, the immediate relative of somebody here, you ain't gonna get a visa. And you're not gonna get one next year, or the year after that, or the year after that. From Mexico, the average wait times can be 10 years. From the Philippines, they can be as much as 17 years. Give me one more second. Okay. What does that mean? It means the realistic choices for people who want to come here is either you don't come or you come in undocumented. And for employers, because the overall number doesn't meet the demand, you have no choice. You hire who's available. Okay. We have responded to that. 10 seconds. We have responded to that for the last 20 years, not by bringing the system into sync with the labor market, but by trying to close the borders. With a fence, with employer sanctions, with raids, now increasingly talking about local federal cooperation. None of this worked, because people still have to come here, and employers still are looking for workers. What it has done is push the workers into the margins, made them vulnerable, and made them more easily exploitable. And you can ask Zoe later about all the ways we exploit workers. And that has had another feedback. It creates a perverse incentive for employers to use the system and play the system. Last phrase. We should have learned the lesson from prohibition. When you try to ignore a market, what you get is a black market. And that's what we have done with our immigration system.
Yeah, use it till the battery dies. It's about to go.
Okay. I take a very pragmatic approach to immigration. Immigration is a great tool. It's one of the probably most basic ideals that made America great and continue to make America great. As has been alluded by previous speakers, there are different forms of immigration, legal and illegal. I think that another problem is that this very group here, I've been working with the summit probably for the last 7 or 8 months with the idea of having not only a forum like this, but a continuous open forum. I believe the key word is communication. I am the 3rd generation, actually in the village of Mamaroneck. My grandfather came here, one of probably 4 Jewish families, hard to believe, a little over 100 years ago. I think that the danger is that people do not take advantage of the history that's here, because if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat your mistakes. With that, and to produce this concept of communication, which hopefully would go from this group to the general community, I think that you should be well aware, and this is on cable TV, I would like the people out there to know the following. This is the history of the village of Mamaroneck. The Mamaroneck riot was an armed clash between Irish and Italian-American laborers at Grant Park, August 13, 1870. Resulting in the deaths of several men. One of the early labor riots to occur in the state became widely known at the time for its violence as several rioters were stabbed to death. Relations between Irish and Italian-American laborers at Mamaroneck had generally been hostile, as would have been seen elsewhere in the country during the late 19th century, as Irish laborers objected to the management importing cheaper labor in the form of recently arrived Italian immigrants. I don't have to go on and on. Obviously, what we've done is change the names of the groups coming in. And why the groups coming in? Because, as was alluded previously, those groups that come in as immigrants take the entry-level jobs, the jobs that nobody wants. But as they get education and everything else, which, by the way, Dr. Schatz is not here, we agree, the greatest gift anyone can give anybody is a good education. That's the tool to raise yourself up. But you have to also put in perspective the fact that these same Italian immigrants that came here a little over 100 years ago are now celebrating through St. Vito's Parish 100 years in the village of Mamaroneck, and I can personally tell you that probably one of the greatest groups attributing to how great the village of Mamaroneck is. And the village of Mamaroneck is a great place, but how much has it really changed? Because what we're really talking about is human nature. And human nature is that when you have bad economies, that's when things come out. People take jobs that nobody else wants, but when someone else doesn't have a job to look for, so they blame someone. This is the same whether it's the Irish and the Italians or it's now Hispanics coming in. And it's prejudice. It's prejudgment based on looking for excuses for someone else to take the blame for your different situations. And most currently, again, that was discussed, and there's no secret in the village of Mamaroneck, the day laborer case. And if you read that case, I read it several times, it's not what the village did, it's how they did it. If you do not take policy and make policy and do it on a level playing field, you're going to get in trouble, and it's just what the village did. The judgment, in essence, said that the village of Mamaroneck certainly has a right, as any municipality, for health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. But what the village of Mamaroneck did was to hone in on specific groups. One, the day laborers, and two, the contractors, and that's why they got in trouble. But at the same time, in the same way that the purposely noted the Irish and Italians from 100 years ago, and the success of the past 100 years, that within a very short period of time, Vanessa Merton, who is the representative of the court, just recently said that the village of Mamaroneck answered most of the objections from the court and why the decision was against the village of Mamaroneck. But this brings to my very point. All that does is say that the village of Mamaroneck legally met its obligations. And I'll come back to the one thing which I believe is inherent to any success, and that is communication. There must be communication, otherwise wrong perceptions become reality. The fact is that the village of Mamaroneck is probably one of the most diverse communities in Westchester County, or actually in the United States. What's most interesting in doing some quick research, previously we did that, I would like to read off what the village of Mamaroneck is. This is the village of Mamaroneck, it's very interesting. Irish, German, Russian, English, Polish, French, Portuguese, Scotch-Irish, Eastern European, Austrian, Hungarian, Brazilian, Jamaican, European, Lithuanian, Canadian, Dutch, British, Swedish, Greek, Norwegian, Scottish, French-Canadian, Arabic, Bulgarian, Czech, Belgian, Haitian, Armenian, West Indian, American Indian, Romanian, Swiss, Ghanaian, Czechoslovakian, and South African. Certainly qualified as diverse. And the problem here is that this is the group that must go out, instead of singing to the chorus that we're doing here, we have to go out and create, and hopefully we'll do it with the summit, open communications for people to address what you hear in your emails, what you hear on the streets. Let's be honest, you go in and someone will say, well, I'll go into a store and just speaking Spanish, and I should be speaking English, and there should be a big push that English should be the national language, and so on, and etc. The fact of the matter is that the reason that happens is because it's a commercial decision by corporations. And the reason you make a telephone call and said if you wish to speak English, push 1, if you wish to speak Spanish, push 2 or 3. That's a commercial decision. It has nothing to do with prejudice or anything else, or preference. The fact of the matter is, I clearly remember in the early 50s when the great immigration push was from Puerto Rico. And then there was some Puerto Rican freedoms when they shot up Congress. And the big thing was, oh, the United States is going to hell because all the Puerto Ricans are coming into New York and they're going to kill it. That has been replaced during the 60s after the Vietnam War for Vietnamese and people from the Far East coming in. And at some point, that may be hard to believe because we're looking at 20%, but the Hispanics will be replaced by another group at some time in the future. I don't know who it is. The fact of the matter is, I don't want to keep talking because we need the time for discussion. I don't want to see the hand go up. But we must communicate. We have to get out to the general public and get those people involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this great invitation. And Professor Gitlitz spoke about 25 years ago when hardly there were any
There was one.
Latinos. Well, actually, my father came in the late 60s, and I arrived in Mamaroneck and attended Mamaroneck High School in 1973. So for all of those Mamaroneckers, high school, I'm class of 1977. But it is great to see all of my friends. I want to start with something that appeared in the New York Times a couple of years ago. And it said, a prominent American once said about immigrants, few of their children in the country learn English. The signs in our streets have inscriptions in both languages. Unless the stream of their importation could be turned away, they will soon outnumber us, and the advantages that we have, we will not be able to preserve. Our language and even our government will become precarious. When do you think that this was written? Who are they talking about?
American Indians.
Actually, who? Anyone? Okay. Okay, this sentiment did not emerge from the rancorous debate over immigration, but voicing this grievance was Benjamin Franklin. And the language that he was referring to was German. German is spoken by new arrivals to Pennsylvania in the 1750s. In the 1750s. The article, I brought copies for everyone to take because it's an op-ed that really talks about the different groups and how we have looked at those groups once they arrive here. Actually, John Jay, who later became the Supreme Court judge, wanted to build...
It's not working and you don't need it anymore.
John Jay wanted to actually build a wonderful brass wall around the country to keep all those Catholics away. And by that meaning Italians, French, Spanish, Irish, and but he wanted a brass wall around the country. But aside from that, as an immigrant to Mamaroneck, as a student who came speaking no English, and whose parents had a dream to see their children get a good education, I want to bring you a little bit of the history. Back then, yes, there were not so many of us. There were maybe about 15, and so we all gathered together because, we spoke no English. There were some that spoke a little bit more that helped us navigate, the system and to navigate the system to acculturation. Acculturation does not happen from one day to another. 37 years later, having been in this country, I still see it as a very challenging obstacle. It is great to have a dialogue if we are all on the same platform. But when you are isolated, when you are not given the same opportunities, there is a head start of so many other years ahead that we cannot have that dialogue. Because maybe I may not feel yet as confident to come and talk about how we can solve the problems. I know that the Hispanic Resource Center, so close to my heart, has done a tremendous job, and I think Mariana and Zoe and the baby that we saw one time as challenging is now a success. So what do I mean by that? Well, my father came here 40 years ago. He came here with a very limited education. He held 2 jobs. Actually, he was a dishwasher in one of the restaurants on Mamaroneck Avenue. My mother was a housekeeper. What did they want? They wanted, like any other immigrant, they wanted their children to succeed. So many times I think of my father as he was washing dishes, maybe talking to his boss and saying, you know what, this is going to pay off. How is this going to pay off? Well, my daughter is going to go and get a really good education. Not only an education, she's going to go and get a master's. But hold on a second. They talk about the 7 leading schools in the country. Well, my daughter is going to go to one of those. Probably his boss would have said, this guy really lost it. You know, the daughter, you know, he doesn't even speak English. Look at him. You know, he doesn't know anything. His wife cleans someone else's houses. Poor guy, you know, I really don't think that, you know, you should pay attention to that. However, you know what? There was one thing that not only my parents do, and all of the people that are here whose parents at one point came here, is that what do they dream of? The promised land. What do they dream of? Seeing that their children have a better education. And that's what he dreamt about. Now, unfortunately, he never got to see something that he wanted so much for himself, and that was a diploma and that wall. However, he died many years before that. However, what did he make me learn? First, to love this country. Second, to always help the immigrant coming into this country. And third, to understand that in order to succeed, you must cross many obstacles. And what are those obstacles? Well, yeah, we talk about, you know, being successful, but we have to have a good education. We have to be able to get the resources. We have to be able to offer services. And by that, I mean that the Hispanic Resource Center has served as the bridge that connects the new community to the programs and services available. And I don't mean people just taking advantage of the system. It's just something as simple as, you know, maybe we can go and talk to the teacher at the school because you're not able to communicate. My parents certainly didn't know English, and they were actually, until now, my mother, who's in her 80s and who lives in Mamaroneck, many times when I go and speak to different community forums, I see her there learning English. And, you know, so she has never stopped wanting to learn the language. But we have to understand that in order to learn a language, you know, it takes time. And many of the parents that come here have 2-3 jobs. Now, just imagine all of yourselves moving someplace else. What is your first priority? Being able to survive, right? Being able to feed your kids. Do you think that maybe they're going to say, well, maybe we don't have to eat a couple of weeks. You know, maybe we should just go and go to school, but they have no money. And you spoke about being, you know, undocumented, not being able to also many times get paid because their children, you know, because people take advantage. But I wanted to share with you something. About 2 weeks ago, I was here with a Chinese delegation of students, and we were in Portchester because the students were here where they were going to play basketball, and they were all excited. So here I am with this delegation. We're going to take underrepresented communities to China and a cultural exchange program. And coming out, going into a restaurant, I see this woman from Mamaroneck. And so she sees me with this delegation, and she says, "You're no longer working with the Latino community, now you're working with the Asian community?" And I say, "No, we are still working, and we're going to do great things." And so she gets all excited and asks me to please take a picture. Okay? So I was surprised. I'm like, "Sure." And she looks at me. And this is before the Hispanic Resource Center, when we began to take parents to New York City to experience with their children, to experience what it was to see the city and the different opportunities. Well, her son was one of those students. This is 15 years ago. And he was very little. So she says to me, "Do you know why I want that picture?" And I said, "So you can show it to your family?" She said, "No, because my son is in Beijing, at the University of Beijing, and he was one of your students that were going into the city, the ones that you took to the city." How great is that? This woman, whose job is to clean houses. Now her son is at the University of Beijing. And what I'm saying is that let's not look at the weakness that immigrants bring to this country, because many times we think they don't speak English, they don't want to acculturate, they don't want to be part of the mainstream. Let's look at the strengths that we have. Look at Mamaroneck Avenue. Look at all those restaurants. We don't have empty stores. We have an economy that, yes, is right now suffering somewhat, continues to suffer somewhat. However, if it wasn't for all of these immigrants who are coming in and now who happen to be Latinos trying to help the economy, we would be in worse shape. Thank you so much, and I
Thank you all very much on behalf of the summit. We appreciate your being with us, and great presentations, very different but very wonderful. Maybe stimulated some thought, stimulated some questions on your behalf. What I'd ask you to do is to, with your questions, if you'd stand and identify yourself, and so they will know. Questions, comments? Yes, Jeremy. Say your name first, please.
Jeremy Yingpen, Washingtonville Housing Alliance. We've all grown up through the last, however many, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and watched this snake of prejudice and hatred. And it just amazes me to watch it worm its way through. When the day laborer thing was in its full force in Mamaroneck, when I came here, you had the allegations of predators on children urinating against the streets. Prejudice sneaks out, and since we're watching what's going on in Egypt, one of the things that became legitimate after 9/11 was fear and hatred of Muslims. So I just want to remind people, when you see your Muslim brothers, say Assalamu alaikum and see what happens, because it will change yourself and that perception. We have to watch. Just watch it. Even the best of us who think we've rooted out all of that hatred, we find ourselves suddenly stumbling on that evil.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's a perfect point. It's sort of what we were talking about before, communication. There's one thing I think we should keep in mind, and it's on a very positive note. The fact is that there's a reason why people want to come to the United States. It is the most democratic country in the world. It offers everyone the opportunity to grow. Whatever group comes in, they can, in essence, go through the same thing, and there is the possibility. But you hit on a very important point. What happened in Egypt can happen here in a positive sense. By the fact is that when you have events happen that are anti-immigrant or anything like that, it's actually the power of the people that will change it. And just in my lifetime, go back to the 1960s when it was the students that started it. They actually stopped the Vietnam War. It was the students that did it. So it's the same way, and it's the students that are really doing it, and actually it's the internet that's doing it now, but it's the people out there, and I firmly believe, and I don't think it's pie in the sky, that the ethics and the morals of the population of the United States as such, I don't care if you're a new immigrant, illegal immigrant, or you're a 10th generation and members of the DAR, that people believe in fairness and justice in the United States. And the key is that you can't let a small group on any side lead you. And how you neutralize those extreme groups is that the people have to get together. People like to justify and correct wrongs. And that and it happens in the village of Mamaroneck. I have no doubt in my mind that the village of Mamaroneck is the best place to live. And if there's any cause for concern, that there are enough people here across the board that will justify it. So again, I'll come back to the same thing. You have to communicate. And we have to communicate beyond singing to the chorus. Somehow, in conjunction with this type of a forum, we have to get out to the people and talk about it. You can't, there's been some comments in the paper, Paige wrote an article, you can't stick your head in the sand. You have to address what's out there. Because if anything happens, right now everything's wonderful in the village of Mamaroneck. We have a great community. It's very diverse. We have great programs during the summer. The problem is if something happens, it's right below the level. It's going to come, well, that's because they do this, or they, I don't know who they is, but that's it is. It's the people come out and you stop it. It's the same thing that happened 15 years ago when there was swastikas going around all over the place. It's the people that stopped it, that got together. So you are the power, not the politicians, it's the people.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment, Jeremy. Other comments or questions? Yes.
I have a question. There's been some articles in Mariana Boneo. There's been some articles in the journal news about communities adopting immigration enforcement, having the police take on immigration roles. And by the same token, many other communities have made a decision not to engage in that kind of practice in their police departments. What is your position?
Well, again, I'll come back to Matchwork, pragmatic. I don't agree with it in the philosophy for itself. First of all, let's talk about really what happens. A policeman goes out, and there is a program where you can have local police officers designated by the federal government, by ICE, to be able to pick up illegal immigrants. But the reality is, if, let's say that happens, you pick someone up, you bring them into jail, you don't call up ICE, and ICE says, well, you don't want them. Forget it. It's just not going to happen. It's not practical, and it also doesn't really help. All it does is give untrained, and I can say right now, we have a new police chief. I think we probably have potential, one of the best group of police officers in the village of Mamaroneck. With human nature, there's always one or two individuals that may have used something, but so far I haven't gotten it yet. Without going on and on like a politician talk too much, the answer is no, I don't believe in it, and I don't think it's pragmatic or realistic. And as long as I'm mayor, it won't happen. Very simple.
Jeff, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, Jeff Megan, Mamaroneck Library. This is my first summit, and I think it's absolutely terrific. Second of all, Norm, my grandfather, Irish, born in 1870 in Mamaroneck, and I want to apologize to all my Italian friends. And third,
Yeah,
are
but
we
the
going to have a
grandchildren are all
restaurant for
friends.
every single one of those nationalities that you mentioned? I'm looking for Lithuanian.
I think it was in there.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't know what office you're running for, but you're doing a great job. Was there a hand over here? Yeah.
I'm Bill Crawford. I'm the grandson of Greek immigrants who came into this country through Ellis Island in 1914, the very year that the church I serve as senior pastor was built. Mr. Mayor, a couple comments in response, if I may. Your comment about we need to communicate, and when we see something to say something about it. You referred to things that we need to communicate about with regard to this issue, and I wonder if you could cite those. And my second question has to do with kind of following up on Mariana in terms of current policy with police, and if I may reference Judge McMahon's decision and what was set up in the provisos, which were specific to say that police would not be asking for immigration papers or validation or identity with regard to that. If I hear what you say, to start with the second point first, you as mayor, adhere to that and would be adhering to that, going forward. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So that would not be in the purview of the police, and they would not be carrying that out in terms of
The only thing a police department should do is treat everyone on a level playing field. I think that to pull someone over, well, let's be honest, the court decision was met. I have a copy of it here. Vanessa Merton wrote her decision and gave it to the judge and said that the village met all its requirements. I was one of the people that she interviewed along with the chief of police. She also interviewed and went out, and actually the village paid for advertising for people looking to see if there were any incidences. And I'm glad to say that there were none that were reported. There may have been some, but none were reported. The police department is a tool. I think what the police department of Village Mamaroneck benefits from, or the residents benefit from, is the great majority of those officers live in the Village of Mamaroneck, as does the DPW and a lot of the workers. That is a key to the success that we have in the village. Will it be incidences? Probably, but it has nothing to do with immigration, it has to do with personalities. As to the first part, what am I talking about? Communication. I'm talking about just a broad spectrum. I'll give you an example. I'm working now with Hector from Hector's Cafe. We spoke about probably 6 or 7 months ago where he wanted me to help him start a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I told him I will help him with the Chamber of Commerce, but I will not help you with a separate Chamber of Commerce. You cannot have a society where you have different groups splitting it up. You certainly have different support groups, and you mentioned it too. I don't think there's a group. In fact, you can still see some of the groups. You go to the Victoria Lodge. My grandfather came here, and I have a picture of a group from New Rochelle that supported all the Jews that came here. Because why? Because you know your own and you're very comfortable. But those groups don't exist for a long period of time because you grow and you go, and then you get into a larger group of the community. And what's happening with that, and we're working on it, where the reason that Hector was doing that is because they felt that there is now, believe it or not, a large group of Hispanic businessmen that have jumped up to the next level, and they're looking for representation, and they want it as a political group. So instead of splitting it up, we're trying to get it together to go into a larger Chamber of Commerce. So it benefits everyone in the Village of Mamaroneck. You're not considered separate, and in essence, reality, you become a very powerful group within the group itself. That's just plain politics. It's been a pragmatic approach.
Thank you. I want to maybe close this. It's almost time, but I would like you guys haven't gotten a question, but I'd like to follow that with really kind of piggybacking on what Jeremy said and what Bill was asking. Jeremy talked about the importance of our standing together and alluded to what's going on in Egypt. And we know that in Egypt there are Christians who have stood with Muslims and Muslims who have stood with Christians and who've been there for them in various times of crisis. What would the two of you like to say? I'm curious about what would the two of you like to say is how we and others could stand together from your perspective related to the immigration issue. How can we stand together as neighbors and friends and mutual supporters and as common citizens? How can we stand beside each other, and what would you like in terms of conversation, in terms of dialogue, in terms of talk that goes on when someone hears something? What would you like to be, what kind of response would you like us, your neighbors, to make on your behalf or on behalf of immigrants, as you see it? What's your perspective on that? I think it's a great question.
I love it, and it just opens up so many different things in my mind. One of the things that, following up what Jeremy said, not only has every group, has there been a history of prejudice, and what you said, Norm, but if you look at the charges that are thrown at each immigrant group since the Germans came here in the 1750s, they're the same charges.
Change the name.
Yeah, it just changed the name. They have immoral customs. The Germans drink on Sunday. They're criminals. They don't want to. It's always the same. I think the two most important things to me, something I always say to my classes, in the end, the most important thing is that the children of the immigrants have a chance to succeed. What happens to the immigrants in the end is far less important, but that their children feel the possibilities for the American dream are the most important thing. And the single biggest barrier we're creating at the moment is making it hard for some of them. I'll be self-centered. I will accept any invitation to come speak on this subject anyway.
They have been here for many years, and what I would love is for each to really call their representatives to bring their families, to bring their, not only their, their closest relatives, but maybe within your house, bring your friends, ask them to have a dialogue maybe between them and say, why won't you support an immigration reform? I think that many times we hear the people that are not, supporting this. When you read letters accusing immigrants for always doing the wrong things, let's answer back and say, these are the facts. Because so many times, yes, we look at them and we say, this is not true, but we don't do anything about it. And, we must do something about this. Let's help this immigrant group. You spoke about now being Hispanics, and maybe in 10 years there'll be other groups. So let's not just stand behind and then 20 years from now say, that's so bad. We never did anything about it, and look how much more they suffered. That would be my take.
One quick comment. This will be quite controversial, I'll say this, but I think this is the nitty-gritty communication. You have to address the concerns of the general public that's out there. Every generation, every parent wants something better for their kids, for another generation to go on and on. I think what exacerbates the situation for immigration, which is the key to the health of this country. If you stop immigration, you're going to kill the growth of this country. Probably the most patriotic groups that are involved in the country, people that come in because they really appreciate the freedoms that you have here. But I think you must address the concerns of people that are out there, and this is all levels, educated, non-educated, and so on. You have to think of the concept of a level playing field. In bad economic times we're talking about now is that at the same time there are abuses where illegal immigrants will go out and work, and let's be honest, they don't get paid or they're abused and so on. At the same time, that's the abuse of the illegal immigrants, and on the flip side, it's the taxpayer who's saying, well, my taxes are going up and I have to pay, and they're coming in, quote they again, the magic word, but they're not paying their fair share in taxes to support the social services, the school, and so on. And that's got to be addressed. It sounds legitimate on the level when you're saying that, but the fact of the matter is, if you live here and you're paying rent, you're paying your taxes and so on. But you have to address the fact that no matter what the aspect is, you have to treat it on a level playing field and bring everybody into it. As controversial as that may be, again, it's communication. I would hope that we can continue this, and if I would say this, as far as the village is concerned, if you do see abuses, bring it to me and I will discuss it at a public hearing. It's on TV, people see. That's the real key. Get in front of the TV and go to Paige and let her write an article about it, and people will discuss it. Otherwise, everything we discussed here, you're going to look at, it's going to be forgotten. You can't forget it. You have to keep it in the forefront to make change.
Yeah. It's 9 o'clock. I'm going to stop it there, and thank you all.
Just one thing.
I've got one more. Go ahead, Martha.
Let's not use illegal aliens, please. Let's use undocumented immigrants.
Some of the congregation is leaving. It's 9 o'clock. If you need to leave, you may leave. Remember, get on our mailing list. Be sure you've signed in today with your email. If you need to leave, you're welcome to leave. And we'll meet again next month. If you want to stay and ask a question, go ahead, Karen.
Actually, it's just a very quick observation. My children went to Mamaroneck Avenue Elementary School, which is a very diverse school. And one of the things that I observed as a parent was that we can all learn a lot from our children. In elementary school, everyone played with each other. There was no difference. My kids played with Hispanic kids, black kids. It made absolutely no difference because they judged each other on the content of their character, not on the color of their skin or who they were. And you don't see those differences. You see that groups start to separate as they get older. But we can learn a lot from elementary school children, how to all play together in the same house.
Yes.
My name is Shoko Iwata. On the immigration issue, I noticed you didn't touch on race. Just to give, I guess, a historical context, when World War II happened, the Germans were all right in this country, but the Japanese Americans, yeah, they were interned. And And when you cited, what is that, 76%, what the superintendent, 76% of the high school is white. And I know I'm a minority here, and when I mentioned the summit, my Asian friends, they are not proactive, and I thought if I could ask you to kind of address the race thing, or you know, and all of the different ethnic groups that the mayor mentioned, there was actually no Asian population, you know, and having lived here 50 years, 1961 I came in, I am a first generation immigrant, but my experience has been that there are certain expectations if you have a certain color, you know, being an Asian, and assimilation is not as easily done if you're, you know, if you're Lithuanian or German, as opposed to having an Asian face, and probably it's true of African American or from people from the Caribbean.
You know,
just briefly. I mean,
one of the things that just fascinates me
maybe
about
it's a
the
different
world.
issue. I don't know.
I'm not sure I know what race is. I'm going to say that frankly. When the Jews, I'm not sure I really understand what race is. It's so fluid in some ways, unless in this country you're defined as black. When the Jews and the Italians came, the image was they came from an inferior race that would never be able to assimilate, and there were scientific studies done to prove that my ancestors were genetically inferior. And somehow it was called eugenics as a movement, and it was subject of hearings in Congress. There was an 11-volume report that proved that the Italians and the Jews were unassimilable because they were genetically inferior. It sounds ridiculous today. How have views of Asians changed since World War II in this country? We view them very differently from the way we did a generation ago. It's a serious issue. There's no doubt, for example, if you look at the Hispanic immigration, success of the second generation is closely related to skin color. And it's tragic. But there's something else we have to keep in mind. Intermarriage rates are skyrocketing in America. The biggest single ethnic group in the future in this country is going to be Mutt or Mongol. And no matter what word you use. The question is whether the African American population is going to be included in the same level in that process. I have no worries about the Hispanic. I have no worries about the others.
We spoke about Latinos being the last group to come to Westchester County. Actually, the two largest groups coming to Westchester County are Asians and Latinos. So we have a great number of people that are now growing in huge numbers. My daughter-in-law happens to be Chinese. And so when we talk about race, you are so right. I like to use the word integration and not assimilation, because we want to keep our own identity. We want to be able to say, these are your Asian roots, and this is what you should always stand for. We celebrate. Look at all of the holidays that we celebrate here. We celebrate San Gennaro's. We celebrate St. Patrick's Day. We celebrate, so many other holidays. So I think that we have to remember what every single group has given, suffered so much for. African Americans who have suffered tremendously. We have to remember that all of those sufferings must never be repeated again. And I think that we keep on doing it. We keep on doing it. Like you said, it just changes. We never...
Tell them where the word Hispanic comes from.
Hispanic?
No. Do you know where the word Hispanic comes from? The identity, I'm an Hispanic? Mexicans didn't think of themselves as Hispanic. They think of themselves as Mexican. Peruvians, they never heard of the word Hispanic. It began as a census category. I think it was 50, but I'm not sure of the date. Where they were looking for a label they could put in to group these people in the census. And they used the word Hispanic, and it caught on. Those are
That is
evolving
Spanish.
identities.
To answer your question, from the 2000 census, the Asian population of Village of Mamaroneck is 3.5%, approximately 660 people. Those are numbers. I think I'll go back to my original statement, and those that do not remember the history are doomed to repeat the failure. The fact of the matter is, if you go back and you're talking about race, this is something, again, that's the same question. You have to bring in public, you have to talk about it. The most abused people probably in the United States were the American Indians who were here first. They're still being abused. That's your history going all the way back. In a very short period of time, I am the eternal optimist. I can tell you going down south and driving south in the 50s and the 60s where I can remember signs, and in this order: no dogs, niggers, and Jews allowed. And it wasn't that long ago. It was the 50s and 60s. I can remember people, as you grow up, are always things are burned into your mind. What was burned into my mind when I was 14, the kid was the same age, his name was Emmett Till. He was strung up and hung because he whistled at a white woman. You had the Vietnam War. The fact of the matter is, the reason I'm the eternal optimist, are there abuses? Absolutely. Will there continue to be abuses? Probably, because that's, I hate to say it, it's human nature. People are going to look, if something's wrong with them, they're going to look to blame it on someone else. Very rarely do people take the blame for themselves. But I think the fact of the matter is, it's education. That's the #1 tool you can give anybody anywhere in the world, because that's the one tool that will help you improve yourself and improve your lot. And the second is exposure, and people will rise up and it will work. I'm thoroughly convinced of this as a group. People have a sense of fairness and they will right the wrongs. It happens over and over again. You can see it, there are incidences over and over again, whether it be in Texas or New York. And then there's the economy that does it. The economy happened in the early 50s and 60s. It started in the Lindsay administration and also in Chicago, when you had a tremendous migration of black Americans from the South to New York and Chicago and the other cities, LA. The reason they did that is because of jobs and economy. Again, it's a full circle. That's why immigrants come to the United States. It's still the best place to be. What you have to do is, while they're here and there's abuses, it's the group and the majority of the people have to do it publicly and force change.
Hi, Zoe from the Hispanic Resource Center. There's a lot that we could say, but just to start with race, and, we haven't really touched on race. I mean, if you think about Puerto Ricans, I'm Puerto Rican, born here, we have citizenship, we're a commonwealth of the United States, but yet we're still seen as foreigners, right? You're never really quite, American unless you look a certain way. And that's just a reality, and I think that, by the same token, things are changing, and, tolerance is not enough. I think we need to embrace diversity and really learn about one another. But the reality is that this concept of integration has changed, and that it's not going to work for every group the way it worked for European immigrants, particularly because of race and access to jobs. And so whatever access you have to jobs and educational level you come in with will then lead to your ability to integrate and enter the middle class and climb up that economic ladder. And so some of those jobs that were available to European immigrants are no longer available because of the deindustrialization, globalization, jobs going abroad. And then there's the race factor, the fact that if you don't look a certain way, you can't become white the way the Irish became white. There's a lot of research on how the Irish were considered black and became white. And so that's a history that we can't ignore, okay? And so I don't think that, in the next 20 years, I'm going to become white. And the other side of that is that maybe I don't want to become whiter, And that's the whole thing. So there's a lot of, controversy around this, and some will say, well, that's precisely because why they shouldn't be here, because they don't want to integrate. Well, who says what it means to be a good American, right? And so if you look a certain way, you still speak Spanish and you still eat your ethnic food or your own, whatever you were taught to, bring from your native country, who says then you're not being more American? I went to one of the top schools, I did all of that, but yet people never really quite believe that I've done all that.
Right.
I have my degree in my office, and I actually had somebody ask me, who went to Columbia? In my office. So, but that's the idea, right? That I couldn't have gone to Columbia. I mean, and I'm kind of over it, and I don't overreact anymore, but it's one of these things that we've normalized certain things, and they're not going to change. But on the other side, You know, we have institutional racism, but we also have increasing diversity, and people are choosing to keep and preserve that culture, and that's something that everyone's going to have to deal with. And it's not just enough to tolerate it, it's to really have these conversations.
I agree. As a matter of fact, if you look at the sense of diversity is what makes this village great, in essence, you know, for the whole country. But if you go to the Mamaroneck Shares, the reason it's so good, when you go down, you can see all the different groups. I think there is a danger in what you're talking about. I don't think, as far as I'm concerned, I would hate to see a country where everyone's goal is to become white.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy. Even within a group, you have different groups. I mean, the classic that I find you know, is amusing is in a religious aspect. You're talking about Jews. I mean, if you were in the history of Jews in Europe and everything else, you were Jewish, you weren't. But you come to the United States, and depending, you're Reformed, Conservative, you're Orthodox. Everybody's got a different interpretation and so on. But I think the strength is you want to maintain your culture. And that's what the diversity comes about, and it's enjoyable. And as a matter of fact, it helps other groups learn. I mean, you don't want to become neutralized. That would be a terrible goal.
I think we could talk about this a long time, obviously, and maybe we need to have another shot at it.
I just like to talk.
Come back and be with us again next month. We have just put out, by the way, a community services directory. We have copies up here if you'd like to have one. They're really quite helpful. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you, it was terrific, it was really great, thank you.